And I'm very grateful. And grateful for all of you who have come out to hear a little about nothing this morning. The title of the talk, as Wang Gong said, is a little talk about nothing. An alternate title might be How to Do Nothing Well. And I apologize for anybody who was here yesterday. It's the same talk. Go on mental vacation for a few minutes, if you would like. After I retired, I moved to a cabin on a remote knoll deep in the North Carolina mountains, far from Asheville, far from town. For the first time in my life, I had no roommate, no job, no obligations, no commitments, nothing on the calendar. One day an old friend called and asked, "What you doing up there all day by yourself?" And like a kid in his room responding to a parent, I said, "Nothing." That's funny, my friend said. That's funny because I was in the bookstore just the other day and I asked if they had any books on how to do nothing well. What? I said, on how to do nothing well. A little pause, and then I asked, did they? No, he said, they didn't. And that's where I got the idea for this collection of thoughts about doing nothing. From a market niche. From a void. Suddenly I found myself with something to do. And I was already deeply immersed in the research.
I'm supposed to do some sound effect.
Sound effect. The experts. Of course, Buddhists are considered experts on doing nothing. I've read that the Dalai Lama does nothing for at least 5 hours each day, but meditate. I know this about Buddhists because by a twisted gift of fate, I found myself acting as director of Southern Dharma Retreat Center for a few years. People from all over the country visit Southern Dharma to learn and practice various traditions of silent meditation with teachers from near and far. For 2.5 years at Southern Dharma, I meditated a little and watched others meditate a lot. I never knew that people could work so hard at doing so little. Wang Gong. Reverend Wang Gong comes to Southern Dharma each spring to help people connect with their true natures in nature. Be here now, she chants. We find ourselves sitting like Easter eggs by a babbling brook on the green slopes of spring, the birds singing in the trees. Wang Gong sings too. Drop, release, letting go.
Drop, release, letting go.
Drop, release, letting go.
And yet questions emerge. Is doing nothing the same as not doing anything? If nothing is ever ventured, is anything ever gained? What's marvelous existence all about, anyway? Is it actually possible to do nothing? Come again? Come again? Teachers at Buddhist retreat centers come and go. What's really there? One asks. He answers his own question. Nothing. I say, if nothing's there, if nobody is listening, then you must be talking to yourself. He looks me straight in the eye. Steve, he says, I'm not talking. Well, I think I'm just saying. Last week I visited my son in Utah. We spent a night camping in the Canyonlands, and my son introduced me to a book by Edward Abbey titled Desert Solitude. Abbey lived as sort of a lone ranger in Arches National Monument at a time very few people knew about the monument, and even fewer visited. The roads at the time he lived and worked there were all unpaved and seldom traveled. Those were good times, he wrote, especially when the tourist business was poor and the time passed extremely slowly, with the days lingering and long, spacious and free as the summer of childhood. There was time enough for once to do nothing, or next to nothing. Abbey found time in the desert to reflect. I am here, he wrote, to confront immediately and directly, if it's possible, the bare bones of existence, the elemental and fundamental, the bedrock which sustains us. He wrote, I become aware of the immense silence in which I am lost. A suspension of time, a continuous present. If I look at the small device strapped to my wrist, the numbers seem meaningless, ridiculous even. And I feel and realize that I am very much alone. There is nothing to do. Walk inside yourself. What is necessary, advises the poet Rainer Maria Rilke. Am I saying that right? Rainer Maria Rilke. What is necessary is only this: solitude, vast inner solitude. To walk inside yourself and meet no one for hours. That is what you must be able to attain. Meditation with dogs. I brought my dog with me. I'm so glad she's not barking. Meditation with dogs. In the Dharma Bums, the beat poet, Jack Kerouac, writes about a young man who meditates alone in the woods with dogs. He goes out in the woods with these dogs and sits there and meditates in his mother's woods here in North Carolina. I didn't know anything anymore, his book's narrator reflects. I didn't care, and it didn't matter, and suddenly I felt really free. I saw there was nothing to do because nothing ever happened. Nothing ever would happen. All things were empty light. So I took off, kissing my mother goodbye. And then he poses a big question. Are we fallen angels who don't want to believe that nothing is nothing? And so we're born to lose our loved ones and dear friends one by one, and finally our own life to see it proved? Are we fallen angels who don't want to believe that nothing is nothing, and so we're born to lose our loved ones and dear friends one by one, and finally our own life to see it proved. So now we come to this. Just this. Here are a few hints. Take heart. Don't grasp. Don't resist. Hang loose. Stay present. Breathe. Here's a little poem by Raymond Carver. The title of this poem is Loafing. I looked into the room a moment ago, and this is what I saw. My chair in its place by the window, the book turned face down on the table, and on the sill, the cigarette left burning in its ashtray. Malingerer, my uncle yelled at me so long ago. He was right. I've set aside time today, same as every day, for doing nothing at all. Addictions. In his poetic meditation, Raymond Carver left his cigarette burning in the ashtray. What do you do when you encounter the edge of nothing? Often we find ourselves turning to habitual patterns of behavior. Patterns such as these: eating, drinking, watching TV, surfing the internet, checking email, turning to Facebook, shopping, buying lottery tickets, engaging in mindless sex, ingesting mind-altering substances. What happens when we put our addictions aside? Anything? Nothing? So easy. Has anyone here heard of the rock band Little Feat? Little Feat? If you have, you're dating yourself like me. The rock band Little Feat shares this thought. I can't sing the tune, but these are the words. It's so easy to slip. It's so easy to fall. Let your memory drift and do nothing at all. Learning to fall. Philip Simmons writes about the experience of living with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, about the loss of muscle control and mobility, the loss of speech and breath, and about impending death, impermanence. He writes about this in his book, Learning to Fall, The Blessings of an Impermanent Life, of an Imperfect Life. When we learn to fall, he writes, we learn that only by letting go our grip on all that we ordinarily find most precious, our achievements, our plans, our loved ones, our very selves, can we find ultimately the most profound freedom. In the act of letting go of our lives, we return more fully to them. We are called, he says, not to sit in a cave or even to lie at the edge of a moonlit field, but to see every object and every action against the luminous background of emptiness. Practice. My dad has been doing nothing a lot lately. He's 94 years old and his heart functions at 20% of healthy capacity. He sleeps, he rests, he eats little, drinks little. Last time we checked, he was still breathing. That's a joke and not a joke. He tolerates visitors only for short periods of time. Sitting next to my dad, I realize that he's much better at doing nothing than I am. And I wonder, are we ever too old to practice or too young to learn? Learn to listen. Andrew Forsthoffel walked 4,000 miles all the way across America just learning to listen. He declined all offers of rides, even from an Amish man in a buggy. You go too fast, he told him. He wanted to slow down. He wrote, "My breath rose and fell, rose and fell. I wasn't doing any of it. It was all just happening. And I thought that maybe I didn't have to become anything more than what I already was. That it would all just happen like my breath, that there was nowhere else to be but here, and nothing else to do but this, breathe the air and witness the night, alone and yet not. Pray." St. John of the Cross ties things together with this: in prayer, come empty, do nothing. Live in a hut. Live in a hut. This is from Song of the Grassroot Hut. Hundreds of years old, this song. The person in the hut lives here calmly, not stuck to inside, outside, or in between. Places worldly people live, he does not live. Realms worldly people love, he does not love. Thus, this mountain monk does not understand at all. Living here, he no longer works to get free. Why hurry? Why hurry? Why hurry? Asked the Southern Dharma groundskeeper. Just to get to the next task? What's the sense in that? Copy a cat. Jack Kerouac noticed this: cats yawn because they realize that there's nothing to do. Say what? Say what? Here's a traditional story quoted by Josho Pat Phelan, who's the abbess at the Chapel Hill Zen Center. One day when Yakusen was sitting zazen, Master Sakito approached him and asked, "What are you up to here?" Yakusen replied, "I'm not doing anything." Master Sakito said, "That sort of thing is idle sitting." Yakusen said, "If it were idle sitting, it would be doing something." Master Sakito said, "This not doing you speak of is not doing what?" Yakusen said, "Even the 10,000 sages don't know." And yet a kid can do it. One day last summer, I noticed a little boy at an outdoor music festival near Hot Springs, lying in the grass, tracing clouds with his fingers. He wore a t-shirt with this message: "I'm not lazy, I just enjoy doing nothing." Finally, embrace emptiness. Jack Kerouac once again. I saw that my life was a vast, glowing, empty page, and I could do anything I wanted. I like this quote because it reminds us that each day of our lives begins as a blank page with nothing written, with all things possible. So I'll close by reading the quote again. I saw that my life was a vast, glowing, empty page, and I could do anything I wanted. Now then, we'll stop talking and you can stop listening. And for a minute or two, let's all see if we can practice doing nothing, just for a minute or two. Let's do nothing here, now, alone, together.